Okay, while students are still joining, we'll get this show started. So I am Diane Schultz. I'm an associate director in the Center for Career Engagement and Internships, and I'm so happy that you are all here. We are fortunate enough to be joined by two Queens College alum who are going to, talk about their career path and anything else that they deem important for you, talk about Andersen as a company. And I suggest that students think about questions that they want to ask, because it's rare that you have an opportunity to ask questions of employees and especially alum, and they're really here to help you and answer your questions and guide you. So I'm going to turn it over to Richard, and then Richard, you can then have your colleagues introduce themselves.
Good, thank you. And thanks everyone for attending. Definitely glad to have this opportunity as an alum. It's great to speak to some folks who are actually studying accounting as I did. And just to introduce myself, so I am Rich Dowman. So I am a director in the private client services group at Andersen. And I've, even though I've had a long career in accounting, I've only been with Andersen since May of 2020. And my experience here has been great, as we can get into as we go on. Dre, you want to introduce yourself?
Morning or good afternoon, everyone. It's so weird, to be called alum. It was just a couple of months ago I was a student, but it feels good. My name is Andre Benjamin. I am an associate in the private client services group at Andersen. I've been with Andersen for a little bit over a year now. The first 6 months, I was an intern, started in January of last year. And then August, I was offered a full-time associate position. And it's been great, great so far, really has. Saeed?
Hi, everyone. My name's Sayed. I'm actually currently a senior at Queens College. I may actually be in some of your classes, believe it or not. I've been working at Andersen for about a month so far. It's been pretty good. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or just DM me now and I can give you my number or email.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Sayed. So just to give you an idea, I mean, we have a, formal PowerPoint agenda, the whole bit, but really when we discussed kind of how we thought we could best spend our time, for you folks, our thought was, a couple of things. Yes, we'll talk about Andersen, a little bit, and some opportunities we have here in terms of intern program, et cetera, but also, to kind of discuss how we got to where we are now. Obviously, there have been, different journeys. My journey has been a lot longer than Dre's. But also it's kind of interesting that to maybe go into sort of how we did get here, and at the same time discuss the profession. And, we're going to try to keep it very conversational and less formal. So we think that'll be the best way, to help you folks out. But what's really important also, and we certainly encourage it, is questions. We'll have time at the end, definitely, for Q&A, and we're here to help. That's the goal here. So that having been said, let's just dive into it. So, Dre, why don't you just kind of give us an idea what got you into the profession?
All right. Yeah, sure, Rich. And as Rich mentioned just now, when we were kind of planning or trying to decide which direction we wanted this this event to go into, we settled on just a kind of round table kind of discussion to make things a little bit more comfortable, a little less formal. Just to kind of, touch on some of the points that Rich just mentioned. In terms of what got me into accounting, that's a pretty long story. And it all started with my mom, believe it or not, because I one of my earliest memory of my mom was she taking me to work with her. And at the time she worked in this furniture store and she did the payroll or something of the sort. So I always just have this memory of sitting on her decks, a bunch of papers on her decks, and she's just, doing her stuff. And that just kind of got me interested in business. And then throughout high school and into college, I kind of grasped the business subjects, business courses more easily, including accounting. And it just made sense to me. Everything was relatable to my everyday life. And that's how I really got stuck on accounting. Fast forward to QC, because I'm originally from Jamaica. I went to college in Jamaica for a couple of years, did high school there as well, came here, and I got introduced to NABA. And that was what really got me more focused, more organized in terms of, okay, definitely accounting, definitely tax. And that's what kind of led me to my career in accounting and tax. Short version of it, yeah.
Cool. So I guess in my case, maybe a little bit different, but we probably got to the same place. As a senior in high school, certainly was not sure what I wanted to study in college. And I had taken an accounting course and I liked it. As it turns out, it was really a bookkeeping course when it comes down to it, as I learned later on. It really wasn't accounting, but it interested me. And also the idea that at the time I knew, and not that it's changed in the present day, but I knew that if I received a degree in accounting, that in terms of job prospects, that they would be fairly good. And so I felt it was important when I got out of college to be situated where that set me up for a job, as opposed to, I had known people at the time who got a degree, and I'm not bad mouthing in any way, but let's say in something like sociology, something sort of more general that did not lead necessarily to a job. So I kind of connected the dots and really wanted to make sure I got there. But that was without even knowing whether I'd like it or not. But I pursued it and hung in there. And some advice I got along the way was that, if you get your degree, get out, get your certification, which I did, start out in the profession, see how you like it. Even if you don't, even if that's not what you want to pursue, but you want to take some different avenues, let's say in business or the like, that, having that accounting degree, having the credential of the CPA, and getting some real work experience will craft you in a way that will be appealing should you want to take other direction. In my case, I followed that thought process, but then when it came down to it, I really decided that I just wanted to stick with it. I mean, in Dre's case, it sounds like he knew right away that tax was in my case, I started in accounting and auditing. And then when I had some freed up time, I would do some tax work. And it became really clear to me that I enjoyed that aspect of it, of the profession, a lot more than the accounting and auditing side. So decided to really make that my career path and stayed with tax from there on in.
And, not to cut you, Rich, it wasn't so much that I knew exactly what I wanted to do, because just very much like you, when I got to QC, I knew I was going to do accounting. That much I knew. What exactly in accounting, I was still very much unsure of. And like one of the most valuable piece of advice that I actually got it from a professor of mine, and it was the taxman will always be wanted, always be needed. And that kind of just all right, definitely. If that's not where I'm gonna stay for my entire career, that's definitely where I wanted to start. So that's why I chose tax. And one of the things that I remember, when was constantly on my mind as a student was the fact that I was so unsure. I would go on interviews, I'd listen to, people speaking at events such like these, and they're like, you need to choose which one you're going to do. But I'm like, I'm in school. I don't know which one I want. I don't know which one I'm going to like. I don't know which one I'm going to excel at. So, it was something that I was worried about, but you just need to pick one, start there. And if you are lucky enough to find yourself at a company like Andersen, you are able to get a taste of the different areas, because where you start doesn't necessarily mean that's where you'll end up. And if you have interest in other areas, it's simple just raising your hand and say, hey, listen, I'd love to, get some experience here. So it's good if you could find yourself at a firm like, Andersen.
Great point and great segue, I guess, to the next slide. Just, in terms of, we've been talking about tax, and I mentioned that I started out in accounting and auditing, but within the field, as you're probably aware, there are different, aspects, whether you take the accounting route and, you see on the slide a bunch of different opportunities, whether it's a pure consulting or pure tax or international accounting, et cetera, personal financial planning. A firm like ours, we're not the only one like this, but a firm like ours, there's definitely, we only have a tax practice, and there is no accounting and auditing practice. But within that practice, you actually get to experience some of the different aspects of tax, and it's not just one avenue, as Dre alluded to. That's whether it's let's see if the next, but whether it's a whether you're actually working on a tax return, and that could be in either on an individual level, it could be a trust, it could be a private foundation, a tax exempt entity, could be a corporation, could be a partnership, and there's that tax, call it tax preparation, tax return side of it. But then there's also the consulting side. And while, I'm sure there are firms out there that bifurcate those practices, and you have people who just do tax preparation and just do tax consulting. One thing that I really like about Andersen is that they're kind of combined, whereas the same people are doing both. And I know that, that may sound good or maybe not sound good, but the reason I think that's important is in terms of learning and training and growing. I think that someone who's purely on a tax planning side hasn't had the opportunity to kind of get into the weeds and really see from a tax preparation standpoint, kind of where it all begins. And then someone who's purely only doing tax return preparation doesn't get to see kind of where that goes and what different opportunities, you can create for clients and strategies. So I think from a development standpoint, it's really helpful if you can kind of see both sides. And for my money, in terms of, speaking with other firms, I think that would be an important question to ask, what the nature of the type of work you would be doing. And, is it only preparation? Is there consulting? And, which area of preparation, will you be exclusively working on, individuals or partnerships or corporations? Is it a mixture? And as Dre pointed out, in Andersen, there's definitely the ability to, you may be working in one service line in one area, and to have the ability to, switch areas if it's a better fit. So, anything to add to that, Greg?
Yeah, a little bit. I was fortunate because, as I mentioned earlier, I worked in PCS, private client services. But earlier this year, I was lucky enough to get added to the AIF team. So this is it. And what I was doing was completely different from what I've been doing for the past year, because now I was not just preparing the tax returns, but I was also putting together the documents that is used in this tax return, because I would normally get what is known as a K1. And I would just take information from the K1 and input that into the return. But no, I had the opportunity to actually put together a K1, see where those numbers come from. And that was always something that I've wanted to do, not just be bogged down or tied down to just one aspect of the work, but to get familiar with as many different areas and aspects of it as possible. And that's one of the things that I looked for when I was searching for a company, when I was trying to intern, and I think, I would definitely recommend that for every student. That should be like one of the number one priorities, learning as much as you can from the different areas as you can, because that makes you a lot more marketable. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And guys, please feel free to chip in with questions anytime you have them. We want to make this a conversation and just the two of us here talking at you.
Absolutely. I agree.
Exactly.
And I guess we kind of discussed, what our day in the life of the tax professional is like a little bit from, between the preparation and the consulting side. But just to, look into the lens of, maybe Dre and I can kind of contrast, at very different levels of experience, what our day is like. And I mean, I'll let Dre speak for himself, but I'm sure one of the things we'll talk about is, being very hands-on and very, kind of early in the process. A lot of what I do at my stage is there's a lot of management of people, and, not micromanaging and make sure everyone's, doing their work, but really managing the workflow. And since everything has to ultimately get to completion, and I'm just one person, I have to sort of manage when work is going to get to me. So if everything comes to me late, that's not very efficient, and that's not very good for client service. So there's that, but there's also managing people. Part of that is mentoring and developing. And I mean, I can give an example. I was on a Teams call last night with another a little more experienced associate than Dre, and the point of the call was to discuss and go over some work that he was doing for me. And what ended up happening, and this happens a lot, and this is really, really important with people you work with, is I ended up going into kind of teaching mode. And you shouldn't just know how to do things. You kind of need to know the why. And this is, I always try to emphasize that. So I kind of had to spend time with him as to why, and not just, how to get it done, because, this way there's that learning process. And if he learns it, a couple of things will happen. He will be able to, next time he sees that situation, does that type of work, that type of project, he now has some experience. But then this also feeds into the fact that this experienced associate will eventually be promoted to a senior associate. And then he will be working with the newer associates. And he will need to train them in the same type of task. So you really need to, in my opinion, be in a teaching environment. You need to work with people who are willing to spend the time to help you with your skills. And hopefully they're willing to challenge you, be fair about it, but, really kind of force you to be at the top of your game and to get you to, to perform at your best. Now, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that, being realistic, it is a business. We charge based on time, and there are deadlines and work that needs to get done. So there are situations, quite frankly, that maybe I have to spend less time than I normally would on that type of situation. But, it's important to make sure you're working with people who are going to give you that time. I mean, I found one thing really interesting about this profession when I first started. I felt like, and I didn't start at Andersen, I felt like I was kind of, given a project to do and not given a whole lot of guidance, and kind of a learn, sink or swim. And although we have to all, step up and figure things out, it's important to have resources, people you can ask questions, people you can get help from, and not rely on them to do your work, but to have the resources to help you get better, to help you, learn. And again, part of that is to challenge you as well.
If you don't mind me jumping in here, Rich. So as Rich pointed out earlier, our day and what we're doing our day might be vastly different, but some similarities in it. For example, my typical day would include, me getting individual documents from clients, putting these documents together in what is called a source doc, and then actually preparing the tax return. And that's just like the basic stuff that I will be responsible for. But then the additional stuff that comes along with that now is that you're not in the school environment anymore, you're in the working world and stuff. This is where initiative kicks in. This is where the soft skills that we were always told about, time management, communication, all of those things kind of comes into play. Because now personally for me, I've never liked to be, I don't like to wait on someone to tell me to do something. Worse, if I know that this is my responsibility and this is something that I need to take care of, I saw whatever is under my purview, I ensure that it's done. I don't wait on someone to tell me to get it done. And as an associate, that is something that you guys will definitely have to work on. It's something that I'm constantly working on, especially the communication aspect. Knowing that letting your seniors know, listen, this is what I'll be working on for the rest of the week. Is there anything else that you'd like me to focus on? You just keep in touch. Worse that we're in the environment that we're in right now with the pandemic, and we're not actually face to face. So communication is even more important. You got to communicate, and that's something that you have to work on. You got to develop initiative, stuff like that. Rich mentioned about learning. As I pointed out earlier, I wanted to learn as much as I can. However, there are certain times and periods during the season, during the year, that it shifts more from just learning to actually getting the stuff done, because we're approaching what is called a busy season now. Busy season might have you working anywhere between 10 to maybe 15, 16 hours per day, because you just have that much work to do. So that might not be the best time to try and learn something. That sounds worse than it actually is, but you just focus on getting the thing done as best as possible. You will have questions you can ask. What I tend to do is that outside the busy period, when things are a lot slower, I have a list of all the issues that I came across on. And this is when I bother, my seniors. I will now, Rich, hey, Rich, can you, walk me through this or explain this to me? And these are some of the ways that you have to go about kind of ensuring that you develop yourself, like self-growth, because at the end of the day, it's going to be up to you mainly. So I see there's a question here in the chat. I'm just going to read this. Are there any requirements to earn an internships there? Rich, do you mind taking that one?
I can talk about it if you want.
Okay, yeah, please.
Thank you.
So it's nothing too crazy in terms of requirements, just from other firms. Basically just you're in the program for an accounting degree or finance or economics, something of the sorts. We don't require you to have the 150, but it is a nice added bonus if you are planning to go for it. GPA, we only require a minimum of 3.0. So it's nothing too strict with it. If you don't meet one or two of those requirements, you can always talk with the recruiter, and usually they're willing to work with you regarding that. In terms of hours, they don't expect you to always be full-time. For example, for me, I'm a part-time intern, so I'm expected only to do 24 hours. And I got that 24-hour limit just because I let them know that I can only work 24 hours. So that's what they expect from me. In terms of busy season, they won't push you, at least in my experience. They haven't pushed me to say, hey, I need you to stay 12 hours today. So they're very flexible with that as well. Yeah, so that's about it. I'm not sure if I missed anything in terms of like qualifications.
No, I think you pretty much got it. And as you mentioned, they're very flexible. I remember I was senior. I interned during busy period, and I was working part-time as well. And they were like the team that I worked with, like amazing group of people. Everybody was understandable. Hey Jay, what's your schedule? How can we work around that? So it's pretty flexible.
Thank you. That's excellent. I just want to pick up for a second back to something that Dre was talking about when he mentioned the soft skills, because that just kind of tees me up to some things that I think about when I talk to the new hires and whatnot. And one of my themes that I always emphasize is to be a manager now, and that not to wait until you've have more experience and you're managing people, that it starts from day one in terms of managing yourself, being organized, being on time, as Dre mentioned earlier, being communicative. I think that's extremely important. When people on my team proactively reach out to me, and it's one thing if it's great if they're asking, is there anything they can do on a particular engagement? It's even better if they have some thoughts on something that maybe can be done. Looking to see, what were we doing at this time last year? And that type of proactivity and communication is great. And as you get more experience and as you start managing people, those skills become even more important. But in a profession like ours, it's usually not the case that you just have one thing to do and that's it. And then when you finish, you move on to the next, even though you could only do one thing at a time, which I'm still trying to figure out all these years how to do more than one thing at a time. But anyway, since I could only do one thing at a time, but there were many, many different balls in the air, so to speak. So how you manage that, how you communicate with people how you manage expectations. I mean, these are all extremely critical skills that will help you be more successful. I would take it a step and go not only professionally, but personally. I think those it's really important. And I think it really makes a great impression on the people you work with. So I could be working with an intern such as Syed, and if he's proactively reaching out to me, it makes a great impression. If he sends me some work to review and I haven't gotten back to him with any feedback, if he, gently checks in with me, I mean, to me, that just shows he's engaged. And another term we always throw out a lot is ownership, right? You have to take ownership. The way in this profession, the way I think about that is, if there's something you're involved with, regardless of your involvement, even once you are done with it, you should try to stay in the loop and understand when it's gotten to completion. And again, if that means kind of following up to just, hey, just wanted to check on that, see how that was coming along. And, through that, again, I think it makes a great impression, but you could also learn a lot too, because that may lead to a conversation whereby you find out more about the additional steps in a project that you were not involved with. So I just think those are kind of really important skills.
All right, so we have a couple of questions in the chat, and I think Saeed just answered them. But I just want to touch on it real quick. And this is something that I've always, thought was important. So one question was about internships for 2022, so this summer. And from my experience and what I know, the internships position for year 2022, they go up. They're available from year 2021. So that's when most of the interviews happens, and that's when people are selected for the following year. Correct me if I'm wrong, Saeed.
That is true for the most part, but we do still have some 2022 summer internship spots open.
Okay.
But yeah, you are right that most of the recruiting was done in the winter. Yeah.
And also,
I just want to interrupt and emphasize that accounting firms and finance firms recruit at least 1 year ahead. So if there are any freshmen or sophomores on the call, congratulations that you're here. And you should be looking to apply for the following year.
Yeah, which brings me to my next point, the clubs on campus. Clubs like organizations like NABA, Alpha, Ascend, you guys need to be a part of that, because those clubs are important. Because there are yearly conventions and seminars where recruiters from all over the country come and to recruit students. And that is your best chance. Not the only chance, but one of the best chances to land internship positions. And I can speak from personal experience. I was the past president. I'm the past president for NABA, NABA on campus, and it was in large part because of my connection to NABA why I am where I am at the moment. I mentioned this to Rich just the other day. I remember the very first interview I went on, and funny enough, it was with Andersen. I think it was 2018, about 2019, sometime around that point. And it was because of a convention that I went on with Alpha. A friend of mine was associated with them. He invited me to come to the convention in Tennessee, which is another reason why you guys should definitely join this association. You get to travel a little bit. So I went to Tennessee, met with Andersen. No, going to Tennessee, I didn't do any form of preparation because, I thought that I could always ace an interview. I could talk, that's just me. I'm charming or whatever, quote unquote. So didn't do any interview prep, didn't do any resume prep, went down to Tennessee and had the shock of my life. I was completely blown out the water. I remember my first interview with Andersen. I did everything that I was not supposed to do. Now, if I had gone to a workshop, I would have known, the proper, interview etiquette, questions to ask, what not to talk about. But what that did, it gave me the opportunity to spend the next 2 years working on everything that I needed to work on. working on my resume, working on all the soft skills that I mentioned about you, becoming more involved in these clubs and in other organizations on campus. And these are very important because the academic aspect of things is important, but they also want to see how you work in a group, on a team, and stuff like this. And this you get through joining these clubs. And then now also that you get a foot in the door because now you're making connection, and these are very important. So I will always stress joining all the NABA, the Ascend and stuff, all of these organizations. So there's another question here. I have a question to Benjamin. The COVID pandemic shows the cooperation and the customers that service can be done with Shenny and Nine. I'm sure that Andersen is taking action to complete this era, but for a senior student, should be looking for big or medium corporation instead of small companies. All right, that's a good question because I remember my final semester at QC, a previous president for NABA came, we were having a conversation and I told him about, my internship with Andersen and the fact that I really wanted a full-time position there. And his response was, what are you talking about? You're a NABA president, Big Four, that's where you should be looking. And, that might be the case for some, but not necessarily hard, because the experience I had at Andersen as an intern was amazing. I had a group of people that was genuinely interested in my growth. And yes, I've never worked anywhere elsewhere, so I don't know if that's also the case there, but I knew I found a company that really, really was interested in me and me developing professionally. And one, I know I'm running on here, but just bear with me for a minute. One of the most memorable moments for me as an intern was being on a Zoom call very much like this with the CEO for Andersen. And he was there talking, I introduced myself. And, I mentioned I was from Jamaica. 2 minutes, literally less than 2 minutes later, I'm getting an email from him and we're just chatting. Like, he's asking me about Jamaica, telling him that he went there asking me about songs, and we're just having a regular conversation. This was the man who was at the very top. And that was just kind of eye-opening and mind-blowing for me, because where I'm from, I'm not used to that kind of engagement or that kind of openness. I could always reach out to Rich. I could always reach out to any senior partners, ask questions and get that mentorship, which is always important. So I hope I answer that question for you. At the end of the day, it's where you find that comfort, where you find that tutelage that is important. It might be at a small firm, it might be at a medium size or a Big Four, but it's whatever is the best fit for you. For me, it's Andersen. I don't know if I missed anything here, Rich.
I'll just pick up where you left off. I think you made excellent points, and I also agree. That's an excellent question. And I could say I agree with you that it's the right fit for the right person. In my career, I have worked at small, medium, and large accounting firms. And, each environment was different, but probably different. Medium-sized firms are different from each other. But I think the key is, some of the aspects that Dre pointed out, that you want to look for, and kind of themes we've been hitting on, that, you want a firm that's interested in your growth and in your career, that, the trade-off for, yes, you get paid, but the trade-off for your hard work should not only be the monetary rewards, but should also be how your career and future is molded, that you're, paying your dues, that you're trying to learn, and so you can advance and be a better professional. I'm just saying, and I also had another theme, that Andre was saying about, the mentorship, and, that he can call me if he has a question. And it just kind of reminds me of the story, actually the way Dre and I met was I was doing a Zoom call with people who just started either as interns and as first year associates. And Dre was not able to attend because he had to go to class while this session took place. But I guess someone let him know that I was a QC alum. So he reached out to me, just sent me a message and, apologized for missing it and knew I was a QC alum. So we set up a call and, had a 30-minute or whatnot, discussion just to get to know each other. And, that led to kind of future checking in. And, when his internship left, ended, wishing him luck. When I heard that he got an offer and he accepted it, I was excited because I thought he'd be a great fit and reached out to him. And, a relationship was born regardless of our experience, our levels, our backgrounds, and by the way, fully remote, right? We've never met in
person, not once.
But we communicate on, a regular basis. And I think that that's also another takeaway from the kind of world, we've all had to live in, that, back to the theme of being communicative, you need to use technology to your advantage. And I'm a big fan of, as much as everyone zoomed out, if I'm going to have a conversation with you, I'd much rather be able to see you while I'm doing it. And if it's not in person, and it's on screen, that's, not as ideal, but a lot better than I think, speaking on the phone. So that's just my 2 cents. Do we have some other questions in the chat?
We do have some, but Syed has been answering them, and I think he's pretty much on top of it,
Awesome.
Yeah, so we could just continue.
Thank you.
I think we have a question. I think we have a question in chat for you, Richard.
Yeah.
Is there a question?
Yeah, there's a question. It's a pretty good one.
Deep one. This is great. What were the challenges of transferring from a private investment company corporation dealing with socioeconomic different customers? Do you have any advice for those looking forward to starting a new career in middle adulthood? So interesting. So in my prior position before I joined Andersen, I worked for one family. We had a 4-person tax team, and the family did a lot of investing, and there was a large family office. So you had accounting and financial reporting people, tax people, investment people. So it was a very, very different environment, in that much smaller than, let's say, Andersen, but also instead of having, many clients, you essentially had one client, right? Different family members, but essentially in different entities, but essentially one kind of client. So we used to use the expression all hands on deck. So when an issue would come up, because there weren't a whole host of clients to service, it was very easy to prioritize whatever the largest issue was. And so it was a sense of, okay, we need to deal with this. And then you got back to what you were, had been working on, and then the next issue would come up. As opposed to, at an accounting firm, when you have a number of clients, it's a very different process in terms of how you manage. And I alluded earlier when I said that it's so important to be organized and to be your own manager. Well, that's something that is, definitely I live day in and day out, and I think everyone, in this profession does when you're servicing a number of clients. I feel like maybe I haven't addressed part of that question. I think throughout my career, the level of clients I've worked with have always, have been very different in terms of, let's say, their, their net worth. And I think regardless of that, I mean, I won't say the work is the same because it's definitely different. The more wealthier clients tend to, there could be more sophisticated opportunities, right? And more, the complexity adds to the challenge. But when it comes to client service, I feel like that is the same throughout. And whether you have one client or 100 clients, it's so important to, to be timely, to be, again, timely, communicative, and, clients are paying our fees with the expectation, just like, any service provider I hire, whether it's a physician or, someone to do work at my house, there's this expectation that I'm going to be treated a certain way. So regardless of the socioeconomic background of the client, I think it's one and the same, how you approach client service, which is just such an important part of what we do that I don't think we've really kind of touched on. So I'm glad I got to mention that. And then, in this great question, it seems like there's a piece about starting a new career kind of later in life. So it's interesting because for me, I haven't started a new career, but in a way, sometimes I feel like I have, because my position here at Andersen is very different, as it wasn't my last position. As I said, we're one client versus many. Also, I worked as part of a 4-person tax team. And at Andersen, there's just so many more people. And one of the things I really like that I get to be involved with, again, is teaching and mentoring and career advising. And so it's, working and also having so many more resources, both personally and professionally here, right? Where we have so much different expertise at the firm, and folks are very willing and able to communicate with you. So if I have a question, I can speak to someone who's an expert in that area, or speak to someone who might get me to that person, and that goes to it being very, very collaborative. But when trying to, again, address that question of career change later in life, quite frankly, when I made the change, I felt good about it, but you never know what's on the other side, right? Until you experience something. So I wasn't exactly sure what to expect. But what I got in return, I was really happy about. Even at this stage of my career, I was made to feel, I was given a lot of respect immediately. I was given a lot of support. People were willing to help me navigate. And it made it very comfortable for me very quickly. And, overlaid the fact that this was all remote, right? I started May of 2020. So I was sent a laptop and a monitor to my home, and that's how I started. But again, just given a ton of support, and that hasn't changed. I just want to segue for a second to something that I just think is really, really important that we have at Andersen that I would, be asking on interviews, and that is the type of career guidance and mentoring that the firm does. And one of the things I like how Andersen handles it, there's a very formal structure, shall we say, and process to the mentoring and the career advising. So even in my stage, I have a career advisor, I have a mentor. We speak regularly. And if I have questions, situation I want to run by someone, I have my mentor. And it's a very private conversation, not to be shared with anyone. So, and that everyone gets that opportunity. And I'm a big fan of the process here and how it's worked for me. And I try to, pay it forward and mentor other people. But that's something I would be asking, in a place that you want to spend your career. And it speaks to what type of effort are they making in, as a potential employer making in your career and your future. And I think if they, have a formal process of, mentoring and career advice, that sends a very good message.
If I may, just to add on to Richard's
Please.
point about the career advisor, even as an intern, you are assigned a buddy and a career advisor. A buddy is someone who is 1 year above you. So in my case, I'm an intern and my buddy is an associate. Your buddy is basically someone that you can go to with your day-to-day questions. If you're confused about something, you can ask them, and they can give you general guidance. And then you're also assigned a career advisor, even as an intern. In my case, that is a senior named Nick, and they can also be a manager or a director. That's someone that you can have more formal conversations with about where you want to go, what your future looks like, if you want to, what service line you want to go into, and things like that. Your career advisor will also be the one who handles your reviews and feedback that he gets from the people that you work with. So even as an intern, you do get those two resources.
And just to touch on that as well, you're not just limited to those two individuals.
Yeah.
Because personally, I reach out to as many different individuals as I can. One of the things that I did as an intern was I set up meetings with all the senior associates that I worked with, even some that I didn't work with, just based on recommendation that, okay, you should definitely reach out to this person. I set up meetings with MDs because you can just do that and they're more than willing to speak to you. Set up meetings with senior partners, and that is something that I really, really love about Andersen, because now you have this group of people, this network that is there to help you grow, learn, and develop, which, I've said many, many times, is something that is extremely, extremely important to me. I know we have maybe 5 minutes left, but I really wanted to say something. That last question that was asked about changing career. I started at QC when I was 29 years old. Believe it or not, I am 33 right now, and I've just started the first year in my career as an accountant. Before that, I did 6 years in the military back home in Jamaica. So my career change my change wasn't just a career change; it was a whole country culture change, and it can be pretty scary, because you're going into something that you have no idea what's going to happen. It's almost like, a leap of faith. And believe it or not, what that did for me was it gave me a better sense of direction. I knew that I had to succeed, because I'm not 20 anymore. I'm not, 19. I'm 33. I have a daughter, because I have two daughters as well. So I have to ensure that whatever I do is spot on. So even though it was a scary experience, the fact that you're older, it gives you a little bit more edge. I honestly believe that you're no more intentional with what you do, how you spend your time. This is where the soft skills come in again about time management. You got to get your schoolwork done. You got to do that to the best of your ability. You got to get work done. And on the interview as an older person, it also pays, because now your interviewers can see that, you're more put together, you're more prepared, you're more organized. So even though it can be scary, it also can give you that edge that you need, honestly.
I think that's great advice from everybody. And Gilson, I just shot you a message. I'm happy to chat with you about that as well. I graduated from Queens College when I was 41. But I built a whole career before, and then came here 8 years ago. So the good news is you're not married to your career. You can, change whenever you'd like.
Yeah, where you start is not where you finish.
But I do want to say that Richard and Andre and Saeed, thank you so much for speaking with us, and the honesty, the generosity, and the authenticity that comes across when you're a QC alum and you want to help others. And I just want to say I'm also a QC alumna, and I've gotten every single job that I've had in my life except my first one by networking. Sometimes I was a little persistent, maybe harassing, but that's what it's all about. But then when you go out and you graduate and you're asked back and you come and you give back, and it just it's a really good feeling for us to give back to students that are sitting in a place where we used to be, and sharing our experience, strength, and hope for the future. So thank you, the three of you, so much for joining. I really appreciate it. And students, reach out to them. The emails are in the chat, and I'm sure they won't be strangers. We will definitely have them. Oh, here we go. We will have them back to participate in different events here at QC. So thank you all.
Pleasure.
Thank you
Good
for
luck
the
to
invite.
everyone.
I'm not sure if everyone took a picture of the emails, but yeah.
You guys could definitely reach out to me. I'm always available to just chat. So reach out.
I know I'm
And
just
then
an
just one more plug for the Career Center. There's a career educator in our Career Center, Eleanor Mavashev. She's on vacation this week, but she works with our accounting students. We have a really close relationship with the accounting department, and we have so many events that we do, resume workshops and on-campus recruiting workshops. Just so you know, on-campus recruiting for students begins, I think, July, August with the workshops, and then the firms will be on campus August, September, October, doing actual recruitment for the following year. So stay alert and get on Eleanor's mailing list, check Hire QC. You can visit our website, qc.cuny.edu/career. And when you go there, it'll take you to our new and 21st century website, which we're very excited about. So have a great day, everybody.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.